Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. You find me huddling under a variable bush willow here on the western fringes of the Greater Kruger National Park. This, of course, is what most of the animals are going to be doing today, simply because it is raining and it is windy and it is thoroughly unpleasant to be out in the elements. If you happen to be unprotected, as I am, well, I am protected, of course, by a sophisticated array of outdoor clothing. But if you don't have that, then your only course of action is to seek shelter underneath a bush like I'm doing here. I must tell you that I'm entirely sheltered from the wind here. Even my little plover-like legs are feeling warmer under this tree than they might otherwise. There is no rain falling upon my head, and that, everybody, is how it would be if you were an animal living in the Greater Kruger National Park, where you find yourself on a very live afternoon sunset. No, afternoon, yes, safari. My name is James Henry. On camera we have Brian Joubert. Trussed up in how many jackets today, Brian? Three jackets today. It's a fairly unpleasant blustery 17 degrees Celsius, which, if I'm not mistaken, works out at, I've completely forgotten, something around 64 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. So for us, that's freezing out here because it never gets cold here normally. And that's the state of affairs. In the final control, on the directing, we have Kirsten. She is being ably assisted by Rebecca. And on the other vehicle, the diminutive Jamie Patterson is driving around and will be presenting to you and filmed by Jean-Dre the Foot Gerding. Welcome to it. I'm going to continue driving down the road here. And while I do that, it is important for me to tell you, of course, if you happen to be a new viewer, first of all, that you are extremely welcome. And secondly, if you are a new viewer or if you are one of our regular viewers, please do talk to us. It is quite likely going to be a quiet drive given the nature of the weather. So talk to us and let's have a conversation about Africa or South Africa or wildlife or conservation or anything sort of along those lines, anything vaguely attached to those sorts of things, we'll chat about them. Talk to us on Twitter, #SafariLive, questions@wildearth.tv if you're on the email, or otherwise you can talk to us on the YouTube chat stream. There, I did it, Brian. I told you I would one day. And we'll have a conversation about what's happening out here. You can see the trees moving all around us. I've got my beanie hat on, covering my rapidly balding head. I've had to put my new cap away because the sun has disappeared. Now, this is not a particularly sad thing out here, of course, because we see the sun for most of the year. So it's actually quite exciting when the weather turns like this every so often. We don't get quite the beautiful sunrises and sunsets that we would otherwise, but it is still very nice. And I must just say a big thank you to all of you for your kind welcomes of Sam Chevalier, our new presenter. He's doing a fine job. It's wonderful having him along, and we're so pleased that all of you seem to enjoy him so much. So thank you very much for that. Our plan this afternoon is going to be to head down towards the south of the reserve. Today, Brent Leo Smith and Brian managed to find Tingana and Thandi. They are still mating. I thought they'd finished. And so that's what we're going to try and find. Jamie's kind of heading down in the same direction, but further to the east of us. And she will attempt, we're both going to try and see if we can't find those two leopards. Also, Brent reckoned that the kill that they were eating was lifted off Karula. So maybe she's around as well, although with her little ones, I suspect quite strongly that she will be deep within some cover, possibly in the culvert or cave, wherever she's got those little cubs stashed, to stay away from this fairly inclement weather. A thick Scotch mist blowing in from the southeast. That's the direction that we're heading in right now. And if Brian tilts the camera up slightly like he's doing, you can see, well, first of all, you can see rain on the lens, which is unavoidable. And then you can also see the clouds kind of moving in from the southeast there. That's Brian cleaning the lens. Well done, Brian.
Thank you, Dad.
Stoic fellow. And that's the story of the afternoon. So let's go across to Jamie, get an update from her and what she's doing, and I will see you hopefully with some good news.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Safari.
Although, as you can see, and I'm sure as James has discussed, the prospect of an actual visible sunset seems relatively unlikely at this stage. The wind is howling as this cold front moves across our skies, and we are currently on our way to see if we can follow up on where Tingana and Thandi were last seen this morning with Brent. I'm thinking that in cold weather like this, there is a good chance that they have moved somewhere to find shelter from the wind, possibly into a drainage line might be my guess. But you never know, we're on our way, we're very close to where Brent gave me the directions to that sighting. And let's go and investigate, see if they're still there, whilst the wind attempts to rip my rain covers away from poor old Wendy. Now, I believe he said the best approach was just by this little pan, just close to this little pan that's on our left. I see tracks. Let's go and see if those leopards are still about. No, I don't see tracks actually. Said it was behind the quarry. Must be somewhere here. Jean-Ray giving the lens a good wipe. It is here. Of course, with all of this, I wouldn't know if I'd call it rain, certainly drizzle, it's quite difficult to actually pick up on exactly where the vehicle tracks have gone off road to where these leopards were. There we go. We are on the right track. Now it's important, one of the things that we really do focus on doing when we approach a sighting like this is to try and use exactly the same road in and out. And that way we just minimize the impact that we have on the bush veld itself. Because of course off-roading does have a certain impact on it. That's Gowrie Main. Almost. I managed to find us a road back to Gowrie Main, but that isn't where I wanted to be. Brent said it was behind the quarry where they dig through and get sand and so on for the road network. So this must be the right approach. This weather has come as such a surprise, this autumnal shift. And I know that we are, of course, all very grateful for the rain, but I must confess I'm wearing 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, and I'm still freezing. We've lost our ability to deal with cold during our long, hot summer. It was somewhere here. See the vehicle tracks? And I think they must have been just here. We seek them here, we seek them there. I don't see any of them anywhere. But that it hasn't come as that much of a surprise. I did expect them to have moved somewhere more comfortable. And John, you were wondering if the influx of animals that we've had in the Sabi Sands, particularly elephants, would be due to the drought in Kruger. And yes, that's exactly what it would be due to. John, there, directly to the east of us, when I went to visit Kruger, the situation's changed slightly now, but when I went to go and visit Kruger, the water holes were completely dried up. It was incredible. There was very, very little food around them. That area had just been so heavily grazed that there wasn't much in the way of food for the animals to eat. And so they have come through towards the Sabi Sands, where there's been slightly less overgrazing or overutilization of the bush, and also where there are pumped water holes, which of course really helps. I'm just trying to make sure I stay on this track that has been made for me by Brent and other vehicles. There we go. Apparently, the sighting that you enjoyed this morning was an incredible one with Thandi moving up into the tree, Tingana also, of course, managing to find a kill that Brent suspects was initially or originally Karula's. His explanation or his reason for guessing that was that he had a set of tracks for one female moving on her own. In the opposite direction of where Thandi and Tingana's tracks came through. It's very common for something like that to occur, for a female to lose her kill to another leopard. And she won't want to have stuck around with Thandi right in the center and the heart of her territory. But that being said, that doesn't mean she might not still be in the area as well. We know that Karula, and it's very common with female leopards, when a female enters their territory with a male, because the female will essentially... Very well done, Jandre. Awesome spotting. Yay! Concentrating so hard on the vehicle. I can see him as well, by the way. There we go. Looking very peaceful and relaxed. The gorgeous Thandi, well spotted, Jandre. Well spotted, haha. Well spotted, like she's well spotted. Because that's stretching it a little bit, isn't it? I'm so sorry. And then Tingana looking at us in the back. Keeping a very respectful distance from her. Oh. And actually, I heard her purring there for a second as she rubs her head on the log, using it as a scratching post. Hello, gorgeous. Isn't it incredible how much she looks like her sister? Big yawny, tired girl. So yes, her twin sister Shadow shares the territory on the western side of their mother's territory. They're the two girls, the oldest of Karula's progeny. She's having such a good head scratch there. But I said that she looks like her sister, and she really, really does. Oh. Look at that white belly. Are you waking up? Or are you finding a more comfortable spot? So cutesy. She's purring. Can you hear that, Jandre? I don't know if you can. Ah. That's what she's doing. She's doing her seduction dance as Tingana looks on. I'm just going to be quiet so we can hear the sound she's making. It's just that little bit too windy. What are you doing, you crazy girl? He's not that way. He's over there. I don't think he's terribly sold on your dance routine. I've never seen a leopard look more unimpressed. Come on, Tingana. There we go. This is incredible. I've seen a leopard seduction dance before, but I've never seen it like this. With her dashing up and about and around and around. And now she's rubbing her head in the bush. All the while with these low, intense purring sounds. I'm giving her plenty of space for now. Nope. Off we go again. I wonder if she's got into some catnip. It sort of looks like it. She is, essentially trying to attract his attention and seduce him. She's not been terribly successful. I'm going to reposition slightly Now, as I said, I'm going to give her plenty of space because she has been known to be quite stressed. I want to give her plenty of space to continue this dance routine. Chandra, you can see him. Let me go forward a bit further. In this chilly weather, okay, let's stick with a view of her for now. Continuing her mad dance moves. Cat in Tampa in this chilly weather, you've said you know this is a silly question. But do leopards get their winter coats? And it's not a silly question at all. It's a perfectly logical question. And the answer is no, not really, just because it doesn't get that cold in the low veld. The lowest it will really get is about 0 degrees centigrade, so close to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Not quite cold enough for them to really need a thick winter coat, like, for example, certain foxes and bears do. This is so interesting. Obviously, we're coming to the end of her mating cycle, or estrus cycle. Oh, there's a perfect scratching post. Hey, gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. I do just need to get onto the game drive comms for 1 second. Afternoon stations, I've got the Fagabagati Ingwe on the northern side of the quarry where they were left this morning. She's really working so hard to get his attention. That happened so quickly. But she managed. She managed eventually. Hello, boy. You couldn't look more unimpressed with life if you tried. There she is, moving at the back. Now, apparently this morning he was desperately looking for the meal that he could smell. He eventually managed to find it and snack on the dacre, so he's looking much more full-bellied than he was earlier. Ooh, I think she's going to try again. She's not a happy kitty. That purring growl. She's restless, she's pacing. I think she's going to go again. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, maybe you've never seen mating leopards before, this looks like an incredibly aggressive process, and in fact it is. And the reason that he growls at her like that and she snarls at him like that is because he's learned that the female reacts that way to his attentions, and she is responding to the pain that is caused by his barbed penis. So the mating process is actually slightly painful for the female, and it causes those growls and snarls as she turns around, and very often as soon as the male pulls away, she turns around and swats him in the face. And he actually grabs her by the back of the neck to stop her doing that during the mating process. But I love moments like this because you really get to see the size difference between a male and a female leopard. It is particularly pronounced, and of course Tingana, the male that's in front of us, is a very big boy. He's an exceptionally large leopard with his dewlap, the flap of skin hanging in front of his neck. Is it my imagination, or does he look as though he's walking with slight he's limping quite, he's actually limping quite badly. Not limping, he just looks stiff and uncomfortable. Might be an old injury that's playing up in the cold weather. As it does in humans, tends to make all of those niggles a little bit more uncomfortable. She's going again, you know. Amazing. What's that? 3 times in 5 minutes. Very cross with him. It's the other reason why I'm giving her plenty of space as well, is that Thandi in particular shows a slight or a very clear discomfort when she's been mating. Well, I've only ever seen her mating with Tingana. I assume it applies to all mating processes, but she gets a little bit more uncomfortable with the vehicle, and she very often turns her head and snarls at you in post-coital aggression, which I've seen her snarl at a tree before as well. And at one very memorable occasion, she turned around and snarled at a blade of grass that had caught the wrong side of her temper after mating with Tingana. Hence the space we've given her. She's going again. Or she was thinking about it. Oh, no. She's had it. She's off. Rocky night. Well, we've now watched Thandi mating with Tingana on 3 separate occasions. 3 separate estrus cycles. So obviously we know that she's not pregnant now. She's certainly doing a very good job at working at it. This is now go number 4. Isn't it fascinating? The biology of this whole process is so interesting. She's compelled to want to mate with him, and yet you can see that it's clearly not a process she enjoys, and certainly not something he enjoys. And yet that is what nature has brought them to do. And as she disappears behind the bush, I'm going to wait to see which direction she decides to go in. In the meantime, let's cross over to James, who has a bird hiding behind a bush.
There are some very, very cross plovers here, everybody, or lapwings as they're now called. 2 crowned lapwings, and they are cross, Brian, because there are their eggies just next to the road. Profoundly silly place to put them, but look how brilliantly camouflaged they are. As Brian zooms out, they become utterly invisible. These birds wouldn't normally be anywhere like this close to the vehicle, but they are only about, about 1.5 meters, about 5 feet from the vehicle now, and it's simply because they're trying to get us to go away, which we will shortly. One of them actually dive-bombed the car just before we came to see you. And this will be Mummy and Daddy Lapwing fairly soon. I was trying to sort of translate what they're saying to each other, but I couldn't get any sounds all the same to me. Wonderful sighting. All right, let's leave them. They're very depressed. Or distressed, sorry. I'm just going to drive slowly away and see if one of them doesn't go to the nest to sit on it. No. Okay. Let's go back to the... Sorry, Kirsten, you're going to have to go again with that. I don't know if we're going back to the leopards. Let's go back to the leopards.
This has been absolutely fascinating. She's come in for a 5th attempt, which he has ignored. And she's bounding up and down the termite mound, trying to get his attention. He really isn't all that interested. She's just disappeared over the back. But I'm not going to reposition to see her because she's going to come to him. So we'll just make sure that we stay with him in view, and then we'll be able to pick the right spot to watch this entire process play out. Oh, really nice and comfortable there on the termite mound. Here she comes. Oh no, don't go that side, girl. He really doesn't want to. Oh, she's at the bottom there. Sure. And immediately flops onto her side as part of a continuing lordosis reflex. It is thought to help with fertilization. Now, if this mating is successful, Rocky Night, you were wondering how long will it be until we know. We will know if she's not pregnant, if she comes back into estrus and is mating again in the next few weeks. But at the same time, we won't know if she's pregnant until right towards the end of her pregnancy when she starts to show. And she rolls around on her back with her feet in the air like a kitten. It's such an interesting process. Tingana definitely walking as though he's a little bit sore. Whether that's from his current activities or from her reaction to the current activities, I'm not 100% sure. That's 5 times in, what's that been, 10 minutes. And they're coming right towards the end of their estrus cycle. It's also because it's cooler today, so they are not expending as much energy keeping cool. And they can use it for other things, including their current occupation. Where's she gone?
Just to the right of him.
She's just to the right of him. Thank you. Oh, yes. So Rocky Night will only really know in the last sort of 2-ish weeks of her pregnancy when her nipples start to swell and you really start to see the females carrying the weight to the sort of the bottom part of their stomach between their back legs. And that's the sign of it. Oh, she's coming again. Heads up, Tingana. The lady wants more attention. She's such a pretty dark female. No, don't go there, girl. You can hear him going, okay, if you insist. Six, was that 6 or 7? I've actually almost lost count. 6 in the last 10 minutes. And I'm sure that, well, I really hope that that will result in what she's looking for. Oh, quick snarl at each other. I mean, this is entirely speculation, but I also feel as though leopards, when they come together to mate, actually resent the loss of their solitary day-to-day existence, especially the males. I think they get very uncomfortable having constant company. There are cats that revel in being alone and secretive. And this whole process goes against not their natural instinct, obviously it's part of their natural instinct, but this whole process goes against their image. She's all muddy as well. You'll find that if this mating is successful in the next 3 or so months, usually about between 95 to 100 days that it takes for their gestation period, depending on the area and depending on the individual female. Off limps, poor Tingana. I think I do actually feel sorry for him. He's looking distinctly pained. Yes, we've got a 3-month waiting period in which we will have to wait and see if Thandi is pregnant. But then, as I said, if we see her mating again in the next few weeks, then we'll know that this particular mating wasn't successful. Senior gold, as we watch Thandi put on her seductive act again and actually scratching her head at the same time. The reason why they need this repeated mating and the reason why his penis is barbed and that causes the aggression is, yes, the big cats are induced ovulators just as domestic cats are, which means they need repeated stimulation before they actually ovulate. So whilst they come into estrus and are ready to mate, they need that stimulation before they will actually be able to be fertilized. And that's nature's way of adapting and allowing the biggest male in the area the opportunity to pass on his genes. So the healthiest, best father will have the opportunity to come and fight off another male and actually get to the attentions of the female. Oh! Bottom to the face.
General Mobile Station, good enough, please.
He looked back at us almost as if to say, can you believe it? I can't take much more of this.
Okay.
And then she goes to rub the back of her neck. And I think she's actually scratching there because she's a bit sore.
Okay.
Where his teeth have grabbed her. And there he goes, off he goes. Looking incredibly sorry for himself. To find another spot where he can try and be free of her attentions. Afternoon stations, these two iwi are now slowly mobile to the west, just north of the quarry.
We'll make our way that side. Just 17 now.
Copy. The best approach is probably going to be from Shabam Road, just on the off-road tracks. They're on the off-road tracks at the moment. Just letting the other guides know that the leopards are still in the area, that we will be staying with them. I'm also telling them that the animals are moving, because it's a good way for them to judge and to plan their game drive. Because there's always a chance when a leopard moves, where has he gone now? That you could lose them.
Okay.
Just like I've not lost her, I still can see her, but I can't see him at all. And he's the one we want to stay with because she will go to him. Okay, let's just go around quickly. Sorry, Jandre. Valeria, as I attempt to find Thandi again, she was here 2 seconds ago. You were wondering if she's ever... They're hidden behind this bush. Valeria, sorry. Back to what you were asking about, whether or not Thandi's ever raised cubs before. I'm going to try get a good visual of them. It might be a bit tricky for now until they get up and move again. Yes, as far as I know, she has. From what I understand, she has a 2-year-old daughter, but I don't know anything about her, I'm afraid. I've never seen her. I believe she might be around Mala Mala, but that is, I haven't managed to get the absolute clarification of that from the other guides. So yes, she has successfully raised a set of cubs before, at least one cub. I don't know much more about her background, and I'd be really happy if a lot of our regular viewers keep excellent records of Karula's family lines, of the various leopards of the Sabi Sands, and so maybe one of you out there, if you could let me know if she has any more cubs that maybe I haven't heard about that she's raised to adulthood, or whether or not it is just the one female. And of course, you can always send those through to #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. As poor Tingana limps off, has he gone back to... I think he might have gone back to that Dacre kill, actually. Try and reposition. It's a bit tricky here, although he's very close to the road. How's your view of him from there, Jandre? Can you see him? I just don't want to put us in a position where we can't get around if they do start to mate. Tingana feeling a little bit sorry for himself after so many days of mating with Thandi, and it looks as though she is about to go back to him. However, James has got quite an unusual sight for the middle of the day. It seems as though he's found a hippo out of water.
So this is quite unusual. It's a hippopotamus, obviously. It couldn't really be anything else, standing morosely like it is there. But what is unusual about it is that it is out of the water in the middle of the day. Now, I suppose it could be considered not uncommon for a hippo to be out of the water when the weather is as foul as it is today. But it's still a sight you very seldom see other than at a night. And he does seem to be doing a little bit of grazing. But hippos always give me the impression that they are A, slightly gormless, and B, slightly angry. Now, as we all know, you don't want, that's a sort of dangerous combination. Stupidity combined with a slight depression and general anger with the world. And so one must keep one's distance, especially if one happens to be on foot. If I saw that on foot, I would be walking the other way at an enormous speed, possibly running. They don't like to see people on foot. They're extremely easily threatened. Let's see if we can go and get another view there. But it's really quite special to see them out the water because you can see them move, you can see the way they walk. I'm going to end up in this dam. You can see the way they walk, you can see their feet, you can see how they operate, which we so seldom are able to do because they're normally so deep in the water. I believe those leopards have been highly enthusiastic about each other. Can you see it, Brian? Straight through there. Shall we go? Say when?
He's behind that dead tree. Look at the monitor.
Let's do a little foray off-road. I think he'll probably run away, though. We haven't had too much road at these rains, so we can go off-road a little bit. We are now deep on Arathusa, everybody. Oh, he's running, I'm afraid. We'll just get a quick view. Oh, there he goes. He's not very happy. Like I say, they're just highly threatened. There he is. Isn't he lovely? See the way he moves? And they look so completely like they are slow and unwieldy and unagile and galumphing. but actually they move at an astonishing speed. Oh no, he's going to hide from us. I'm afraid I don't want to pressure him. Isn't that wonderful? That's really quite special. Nice to see their sort of dark grey colours juxtaposed against this beautiful green drainage line. Hello, Kylie. You want to know if I have ever seen a hippo on foot? Yes, I have. And thankfully, the hippo did not see me. So, in fact, I was walking along on a sunny morning once. I was taking a journalist for a walk, and a lady I was seeing at the time, and we went walking along at Londolozi, and we were having a wonderful walk in the sort of early morning light. It was bright sunshine, middle of summer, so the heat was starting to build, and I saw a grey shape in the bush quite far away from us on the other side of the drainage line that we were walking along, so there was no danger, and I immediately assumed it was a rhino, simply because hippos are not out in the day normally. But it was a hippo going back to whatever piece of water he thought that he was best suited to. And yep, he didn't see us. We trailed him on the other side of the drainage line for a little while, and then we kind of moved off and left him. But yeah, I think I've seen a hippo once or twice more on foot, but very seldom have they ever seen me. And that's a really good thing. So what we're going to do is head to the very north of Arathusa now, and then head down the eastern boundary of Arathusa. Rochelle, you're in London, and you want to know if hippos can run faster than people. Rochelle, a hippopotamus, at least there's very little out here that can't run faster than a human being. A hippopotamus will probably reach a speed of about 45 to 50 kilometers per hour. Now, if you're Usain Bolt, and you are not, you are Rochelle, then you can probably run at a consistent speed of about 38 to 40 kilometers an hour. So you can probably run, if you're pretty fit and pretty quick, you can probably run at about 32 if you're really fast. And so we are at least sort of 15 to 20 kilometers an hour slower than a hippopotamus. Now, elephants will run at about 60, and even a little tree squirrel will be faster than we are. The things you cannot run here would be a leopard tortoise, obviously, a millipede, and perhaps a giant land snail. But other than that, you're really going to struggle to beat something out here. Even a guinea fowl, the humble guinea fowl, can run the 400 meters in faster than the world record of 43 seconds. So that is quite something. Let's go back to the leopards.
Right, number 9 in the last, I would say, 30 or so minutes. Oh, she's cross. So unhappy with him. Shame. Poor girl. Definitely not terribly impressed. Now, I had the most thrilling moment while you were with James, where she walked right next to the vehicle. It's the closest I've ever been to Thandi. And she stopped and she looked at Jandra and myself, and then she moved past quite happily because she'd chosen to approach us. But I was struck by how incredibly tiny she is. I think she might even be smaller than Shadow. She really is a tiny little female. Really beautiful, dark in color. Look, I mean, she's also covered in mud from where she's chosen to lie, which makes her darker. But she really is a beautiful cat. Oh. And you can't see her beautiful face because I put Jandra in the worst spot. Here we go. That's fine for now because she's going to get up and follow Tingana again. Now, Anne, you were wondering, just because we've been watching them be particularly enthusiastic this afternoon. There she goes. And you were wondering how long they've been mating for, and if I could comment on their current level of activity, since it is towards the end of their estrus cycle. Now, as far as I know, they started mating 5 days ago, so it is very much towards the end. I think the reason that they are mating as frequently now is, first of all, I don't think every initiated mating here is successful. I don't think it's always resulting in full penetration, but I think it's also because she's cold. I mean, it's cold, so they don't need to worry about wasting body or warming themselves up too much and getting too hot. Guys, we are going to have to leave this sighting at some point. I'm trying to find a good position, because there are other vehicles that would like to come and join, and of course we've had a good 45 minutes of them all to ourselves, which has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much. I'll let you know when I'm around. I'm still there on Ganymede, Ronyin area.
I might need to just follow behind taxing for now. Andrew, I will pull out when you get here.
That's fine.
Copy that. Where have they gone to? They've already crossed past this little pan. It's such a beautiful spot here. Oh, Anne, sorry, Anne. I was in the middle of answering you. I think it's because it's cold that they are mating so frequently. And I think that they're going to be done very, very soon. I mean, usually with the big cats, you get a drop-off towards the end where they stop mating. There's a decrease in frequency of the mating. And I really honestly think that perhaps it's just the fact that it's not too hot. So they've got a little bit more energy to devote to such energy. They're mating again. Can you believe it? Sorry, Jean-Dre, I have a buffalo thorn there. I know it's not the clearest view. That was number 10. 10 in 30 minutes. Or 40 minutes, maybe. And they definitely, usually you see them mate about once every 15, 20 minutes. They've definitely been far more enthusiastic this afternoon. And he is flopped down there. Okay. Now, as you can see, it's quite a tricky position in terms of getting a view of them. And there are two vehicles that I've allowed Taxon and Aubrey to just go ahead of me, so because their guests haven't had a clear view yet. We will have to take our position at the back. It might mean we have to look through some leaves, but that's okay. We've had some incredible visuals so far. Oh, watch out. Tammy, who's watching in Indiana, the reason I'm giggling a little bit is because Tammy would like to know, and I'm just going to unfortunately present you with that view for now. Not terribly clear. Can you see her from there, Jean-Dre? Sort of. Not really. Not so much. Tammy was wondering what on earth Tingana's going to do with all his time when the ladies all have cubs. Will he be glad for their lack of attention, or will he go off in search of other females? And the answer, Tammy, is I somehow feel as though he might be somewhat relieved, but there will be other females in the area to mate with. Tingana does have quite a large territory, so whilst he won't necessarily go looking for females to mate with on his boundary patrols, if he does encounter a female in estrus, he will stop and spend a little bit of time with her. I mean, I think I'm probably anthropomorphizing it a little bit. You know, it's instinct that plays a role. He doesn't know whether he's glad or sad that the ladies have found him, but it is really hilarious to watch because you can just see his disgust when they approach him. He's just so put upon and not enjoying anything at all. And the way that he was walking earlier suggests to me that he's also feeling quite sore. This, I'm afraid, is our visual. This is as good as it's going to get for now. We'll just have to be patient and wait for them to move again. There's a leopard. There are 2 leopards there, believe it or not, and I cannot, unfortunately, or I can get you a bit of a view. She is hiding. If I go forward a bit, there we go. There's a leopard there. Here we go again for the 11th time. Somewhere. We might have to just listen this time around. Now, Tammy's question about Tingana. Over the last few months, we have seen Tingana mate with Kwetile, then Shadow, then Karula, then Shadow again, then Karula again, then Thandi, and then Thandi, and then Thandi. And he basically hasn't gone for any extended period of time without a break. He, obviously, as the dominant male leopard in this area, his genes are in much demand. And the ladies all go looking for him. He doesn't have to go looking for them. But Leo, you were wondering about if, for example, 2 females were in estrus at the same time, would they fight for the attention of the male? And no, probably not. I have heard reports of sightings with a male mating with 2 females at the same time. I've also heard a report of 2 males mating with 1 female at the same time as well, without fighting each other, which is interesting, because that is the sort of situation that you'd expect the leopards to really come into conflict over. Passing on your genes is an intrinsic instinct within all of the animal species out here, and wanting to be the one that does it rather than allowing another male or another female to do so is a different story. So no, probably not. The females probably wouldn't fight, at least in this area. I think because Thandi and Shadow and Karula are all related. There might be some growling. They'll certainly have very stern words with each other. Perhaps even Karula might blow another spit bubble, as she did the last time she was seen with Shadow. It was highly entertaining, not terribly dignified behavior for the Queen of Djuma, but she did manage to blow an incredible bubble of spit. So they might growl at each other, grr a little bit, and then the male will, and take turns to mate with the male. The fact that 2 males have been seen mating with 1 female is a situation that I find more extraordinary. You might even find, while we've been sitting here, that Karula is somewhere here, somewhere in this vicinity. It's very common because Thandi's been brought into the center of her territory by Tingana. It's very common for that particular female to go and watch what's happening. All right, this is actually going to be our last few moments with them. Andrew, you can make your way. As soon as I've got your audio, I'll pull out. We're on the northern side of that pan, close to the Shabam Road junction with Treehouse Dam Road.
Okay, thanks so much. I'll be making up my approach.
Copy. Okay. Well, in the time that we've spent with them, we've seen them mate 11 times, or at least seen them mate 9 times and heard the 2 other times. It's been quite an extraordinary way to spend an afternoon. Thank you, girl and boy, for allowing us the privilege of spending a bit of time with you. I'm going to head out, let Andrew come into the sighting. In the meantime, let's find out what James is up to.
Look. There, everybody, is a little purpley flower called Indigofera. And I have stopped to show it to you because it is pretty, A, and B, you can see the silvery sheen of water on the grass behind it. And that has been falling all day long. Just little bits of water coming out of the sky in sort of waves of drizzle. If you can imagine those thick sort of Scotch mists blowing in off the sea in waves. That's basically what we've had today. So it hasn't rained for the last little while. I'm sure it will again during the course of the afternoon. But the grass is just holding a beautiful little example of what looks like mercury there. Next to some Indigofera flowers. I don't know which species of Indigofera they are. Anyway, that doesn't matter. They're still just as pretty. So our plan now is to head south again. We're now at the far northeastern corner of our traversing on Arathusa, and we're going to go south. We know that Shadow has been up and down in this area with her youngsters. We have an idea where the youngsters are, but we're not going to go anywhere near that. We're just going to maybe see if Shadow isn't on the hunt, say hello to her, give her our fondest regards, and then we'll press on. But it will be very nice to see her. We'll probably try and view those cubs again, not again, for the first time, in about 4 weeks. They are now about 4 weeks old. And of course, Thandi and Tingana are quite likely to have some more cubs fairly soon, if their enthusiasm for each other is anything to go by. Otherwise, we haven't found a great deal here on Arathusa. It has been fairly quiet and blustery, as I suspected it would. And I can't tell you, I mean, I know when I started off the drive, I was sitting under that bush and I'm sure some of you thought I wasn't being serious, but I really was being very serious. It's a really nice place to be. In the base of these trees, underneath the leaves, you're sheltered from the wind, you're sheltered from the odd little squall that comes through. And that's, I think, what most of the animals are doing around here right now. We saw some impala and one woodpecker since we left you. And I'm afraid that's been about it. And that's pretty normal. Oh, Christy, hello, you're on Twitter, and you'd like to see a cheetah on drive. Well, Christy, I also would love to see a cheetah on drive. Brian, would you like to see a cheetah? I'd love to see one. We'd all like to see a cheetah. Christy, it's unlikely, I'll tell you why it's unlikely, and if you keep watching in the next week or two, it might become slightly more likely. So you can see the landscape around us is quite thick. There's quite a lot of trees. And remember, a cheetah is what we call a courser. They like to hunt on flat, open ground because they run at 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. And I mean, you can imagine trying to run through here at 60 miles an hour. You'd either get a very nasty headache, or in some cases, cheetah have been known to disembowel themselves by mistake. They run so fast over a stump and they actually slice open their innards and disembowel themselves. So this is not ideal habitat for a cheetah. But in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will be driving on Cheetah Plains, which is named for the southern section of the reserve there that is made of, it's slightly more open because the geology is different. It's got gabbro. The underlying geology here is called granite, and there it's gabbro, and that makes a lot more grassland than it does the granite, which tends to make this kind of broadleaf Cumbrian woodland, which is really not ideal cheetah habitat. So with any luck, in the next week or 2, or maybe 3, we will be seeing a few more cheetah on drive. So just to give you a progress report on that, the tower went up today at Cheetah Plains. Not sure why that's there. Oh, yes I am. And that means that the technical stuff is happening, but there will be an inevitable phase where when we switch on, it's highly likely that there will be things that need to be adjusted and fixed. So while we could possibly be live from there by as early as next week, I think there are going to be a few things to sort out before that becomes a reality. But very exciting times. We go from 1,500 hectares to 2,100 hectares, which is 4,000 acres, to about, just under 6,000, which is really nice. But otherwise, things on the animal front out here, deathly quiet. Ryan, do you see any animals?
No.
No.
Nothing. Not even birds.
Not even birds. Hello, Annie and Dave. We want to talk about our other coursing predator out here. That is the African wild dog, or the painted wolf of Africa. Very beautiful, magnificent animal. Certainly one of my all-time favorites, if not my favorite. And you want to know, do they have a den? And what would bring them to Djuma or Arathusa? Well, first question, do they have a den? Not a permanent one, no. Only when they have just had puppies, and those puppies spend about 2 to 3 months denning. And the den will normally be in a termite mound. Howling gale coming through now. They'll normally be in a termite mound, and they'll spend about, so yeah, like I say, 2 or 3 months, and then the pups will start to move with the pack, and they won't be stashed in the den anymore. What would bring them here would be the need for food or hunting, and their movements do tend to be fairly random. Sorry, just making my way around this slightly difficult area. There's a crested franklin stop bird. No, even the franklins don't want to stop for us. So their movements are pretty random, and they may or may not come back here, you know, at various times, Dave and Annie. And that's how, I mean, we'd normally see them. What normally happens, Annie and Dave, is that they'll come through, say, for 2 weeks at a time, and then they'll disappear again for up to 2 or 3 months at a time, and they'll come back again. We do know that the pack that we normally see came south onto or came south from the Manuleti briefly onto Buffelshoek recently, and then they seem to go back north again. So we haven't seen the wild dogs actually for some time now, so we're due a visit. And they'll start to mate now also. Their gestation period is about 70 days, and they like to give birth in the middle of winter. So as we head to, well, I mean, May is probably a more reasonable time for them to mate, but some of the packs will mate now, and they'll give birth sometime in the winter, which may seem like an odd time for an animal to give birth, given that there aren't a lot of little baby things to eat around. But if you're a coursing predator, like a cheetah or a wild dog, the winter is a good time because there are no leaves on the trees. And so everything is clear, and it's much easier to chase your prey through the bush than it is at a time like this. And that's why they give birth almost always in the middle of the winter. Thank you, Annie and Dave. Gosh, Brian, it's fairly barren out here. Maybe we'll be able to see a terrapin, Brian. Maybe in the pan there'll be a terrapin, some form of heartbeat and life. No, even that is barren. Monique, you're in London. You want to know about the tower at Cheetah Plains, and is it a tower or is it a balloon? Well, in theory, it could have been a balloon, Monique, but it isn't a balloon. We haven't managed to quite make that work yet. I say we. I mean the technical department, because I'm not nearly clever enough to be in the technical department. They are trying, for everybody else who perhaps doesn't know what Monique's talking about, there was a balloon experiment. We're still doing a balloon experiment where we send, instead of putting the repeater on the end of a fairly expensive tower, you put it on a balloon and send it into the air. We haven't managed to make that work just yet. But this is going to be a tower. Hello, Eric Moore, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Eric, you want to know, we've got lots of standing water around at the moment, and will some of the wading birds and waterfowl come back or inundate the area because of this? Interestingly, probably not, Eric, and that's because most of the wading birds, of course, are migratory, and that means that most of them have headed north already for the winter time, our winter time, your summertime, or most of the waders' case is the Palearctic summertime, so up into Eurasia. And so despite the fact that we do have standing water here, it might delay the departure of a few of the wading birds, but certainly I don't think it's going to attract anything back that would otherwise have gone away. I suppose you might get a few sort of nomadic wading species, and there aren't that many around. I mean, a few nomadic ducks perhaps might come and spend a bit of time here when they wouldn't normally, things like a fulvous duck. But no, I don't think that they're going to attract a whole lot of wading birds this time of year. Certainly, if we'd had early rains, then I think we would have had far more waders than we did at this time, sort of earlier in the season? Susan, I love this question. I've been asked it once or twice before. And it's not noticeable, but I do think it happens. And you want to know, do the animals here get thicker winter coats like yours do in Michigan? Susan, the answer is yes, probably. I'm not sure how thick they get, but if you look at an impala in the middle of July, they certainly do appear to be a little more furry than they are at this time of the year. But remember, the temperature variation that we get here is nothing like as wide as it is in a place like Michigan. So I don't know what your minimum temperature is in winter, but probably close to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Maybe minus 10 or minus 15. Here it's 4 degrees Celsius, which is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's not that cold. And then in the middle of the day, it goes all the way up to sort of 23, 24, which is, that's into the 70s Fahrenheit. So that's pretty good temperatures. Whereas in Michigan, of course, you probably drop to minus 15 on really cold days and don't get up above 3 degrees Celsius. And so the animals there and the animals in all of the northern reaches of the northern hemisphere have to grow these thick winter coats, otherwise they'd freeze to death. But that just isn't the case out here. And that is a lovely question, because I'm often amused by some of the pictures I see of animals from the northern hemisphere in their winter coats. It is very amusing indeed. The quintessential one being the Highland coo of northern Scotland, which develops a quite fantastic array of long, very warm hair for the Highland or the Scottish Highland winter. Just a termite mound through there, Brian. Oh, look, Brian, there's a bird. Quickly, film it before it flies. Might be the last thing we see. Virtual starling, everybody. There we go.
Splendid sight.
Splendid, yes. I'm going to trouble you just once more, Brian, to show us how fast the clouds are moving, if you don't mind. But you can see that there is a mighty wind blowing up there. And the clouds are moving at a great speed, and you can perhaps hear the wind now moving through the silver cluster leaf orchard off in front of where your picture is. Those trees just below your picture there are waving in this southeast wind. Brian is back quickly. Two of them, Brian. Look at that, everybody, a spectacular sighting of Birchall's starlings. All right, Deborah, armchair traveller, you want to know about the rollers, the bee-eaters and the kingfishers, and which ones of them are resident and which ones of them go away for the winter. Well, in terms of the kingfishers, the most obvious one that disappears, of course, is the woodland kingfisher. Its call is no longer heard, chorusing throughout the bush, throughout all times of the day and night, which initially is quite a mercy. Look, I will get back to your question, Deborah. Here are the two plovers, or lapwings, that we went past earlier, and their nest. We're just going to drive straight past this time. See if you can spot it. Oh! Brian, you all right?
Yeah, all right. Slightly traumatized.
Brian was traumatized there, attacked by a very angry crowned lapwing. Anyway, Deborah, so we don't get the woodland kingfisher here in the summertime. The grey-hooded also goes away, as does the pygmy. The pygmy kingfisher is also migratory. So those three disappear. So potentially in the winter you can see the brown-hooded. I haven't seen a striped here, which I think is unusual. They also migrate, but I haven't seen one at Djuma. I used to see them quite a lot in the south of the Sabi Sands. So you can see woodland, you can see, not woodland, you can see brown-hooded, pied, and potentially giant as well here during the course of the winter, and also malachite if you've got enough water. But I don't think we're going to see those. Then the bee-eaters, we get 4 species here, of course. I haven't brought my book with me, I'm afraid. Let me stop it. I've got them on my phone, simply because of the rain, and I don't want my book to get inundated. But I'll show you quickly, for those of you who don't know, otherwise it's going to be extremely boring. The bee-eaters are beautiful birds, and they've got lots of lovely colours. There we go, Brian. And we get 4 species here, 2 of them on this particular page, and both of these 2 are resident. The white-fronted is there, and that one's resident. Let's just double tap him. Tap, tap. There, beautiful picture of the white-fronted bee-eater. He hangs around for the winter time. There's a photograph of him. And then if we go across, we might go straight to the little bee-eater. That is the other resident species that we get here, the little bee-eater. Then we have 2 that are migratory, also very beautifully coloured. We've got the European, that's it there. It's also used to be called the golden-backed bee-eater, which you can see why. It's because it has a what, Brian?
A golden back.
Correct, golden back. Very obviously seen there. And then, of course, we have the southern... not that we don't have that one. We've got the southern carmine bee-eater, and they also migrate. But they're intra-African migrants, so they migrate into northern parts of Africa. And unlike the European, which, of course, goes back to Europe. They're just the most stunning colours. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? So those are the bee-eaters that migrate. And then the other one you wanted to know about was the rollers. Now, the rollers, they don't migrate, any of them, I don't believe, except the European, of course. Let me quickly show you them, just in the absence of any kind of large biting predator, which might arrest our attention. They're all the rollers, and there's the European, and he's the only one, as far as I'm aware, that migrates. Beautiful. He's actually not quite as beautiful as that picture. That's a better picture of him. He's a fairly dull-coloured blue bird. Yes, that's a much better, more accurate representation of him. And he goes back to Europe. That's been doctored, that photograph. He has got quite bright wings, I suppose. And then the most common colourful bird of the winter time is, of course, the lilac-breasted roller, who is magnificent. There he is there. And it's so wonderful to have such a colourful bird being so common. That's him. And then we also get a purple roller here. We'll just see if that's him. That's the racket-tailed, which we don't get here. There's the purple roller. We get him too, and he is resident. So, Deborah Armchair Traveller, I hope that tells you all you need to know about the rollers, kingfishers, and bee-eaters. The purple roller, yes, definitely much more magnificent in pencil crayon than he is in photographs. Right, let us go across to Jamie. She's got some common antelope, not seeking shelter in the leaves, and we will continue south down this road.
A common antelope, but an unusual one in one regard, and that of course is the fact that this impala is missing half of his horns. We're missing one horn, and so he only has one sticking up out of the top of his head. This is not Nelson, our famous one-horned, one-eyed male impala. This is a different one-horned impala. He's got both eyes intact, so he's got one up on Mr. Nelson. There you can see. And off he goes. I'm glad he stuck around. He's very patient considering how incredibly windy this is. I mean, the trees are all bending over as this wind howls in from the south, and it's making all of the animals terribly unsettled. Sure. And it's particularly pronounced in this area because there's so many silver cluster leaf trees, and the underside of a lot of the bush willow leaves are also quite silvery. So we've sort of got this incredible color shift that's happening as the wind blows the trees. Now, just as James sent you across to my side, my earpiece appears to be playing up a little bit, so I'm just going to test it. Okay, it seems to be working fine. There we go. It seems to be all sorted for now. Hopefully it stays that way. So it's very common to see, not very common, but it is fairly common to see impala with a broken horns. Now, having just come from a summer that was about easily most days over 40 degrees, well into the hundreds Fahrenheit every single day. I am at this point feeling positively hypothermic with this wind biting through our clothes. I'm not sure exactly what the temperature is at the moment. It's probably in the low 60s Fahrenheit, so not really all that cold. I think we've just been spoiled in terms of a temperature. But Beard, you were wondering, in terms of the animals' responses to these kinds of cold snaps, would the animals in Kruger know to move north if there's a cold snap in the south or vice versa? Or is it a moot point just because we don't really get cold snaps? We do get cold snaps. The north tends to be a little bit warmer than the southern part of the Kruger, but that's generally, there's not much in terms of difference between the different parts and temperatures, not enough to initiate a movement of animals. The only thing that will really get them moving from north to south or around the Kruger will be access to food and access to water. That will be what causes the larger migrations. It won't be initiated by temperature. In South Africa, our winters are, especially in the low veld. The high veld less so. The high veld around Johannesburg, that's at a much higher altitude. And those winters, our winters do get very cold. It gets very frosty. But out here in the low veld, you hardly ever see frost. You certainly never see snow. And it's not really a drop in temperature that is sufficient to require animals to move about because of it. The animals out here are far more concerned with access to water and the dry versus the wet season. This drongo on the end of the branch here, Jean-Andre, has caught something, and I think it is a butterfly. Does that look like a butterfly? I can't quite tell.
African migrant, I think.
Yeah, it does look like an African migrant butterfly, and they just actually had a little bit of a fight over it. That sort of attracted my attention. I could just hear them screeching at each other. Oh, gulp, 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 gone. Just the tip of the wings sticking out. This is a lovely little bird that we see all year round in this particular area. But of course, I know that with James was chatting a bit about the migration patterns of the different birds. And Brian, who's watching in Minnesota, you were wondering what the furthest migratory species is. Oh, sorry, hold on one second. Somebody's just trying to get hold of me. I'll get back to you in a moment, Brian. Standing by.
Yeah, you're welcome to make your way back if you want to.
Okay, copy that. Thank you. Are they still same position?
Positive.
Thanks, Dax. On my way. Should we go back to mating leopards? I feel as though we should go back to mating leopards. Nobody else wants to go into that sighting. So we can go back and have it all to ourselves. And I'm going to make that decision. Sorry, Brian, I promise I will get back to you. I'm going to make that decision because they're so mobile. This weather is so cool and cloudy that they could get up and move 20 feet into that block and we wouldn't be able to find them again when we did want to return to them tonight. So that is my plan. Let's go back towards the mating leopards and rejoin that sighting so that they don't disappear on us. So Brian, longest migration. Look, steppe eagles, I'm trying to think, I don't know that this is exactly the longest. It is one of the longest, would be steppe eagles migrating back up towards Russia. I'm trying to think what else would be considered. I mean, the swallows and the barn swallows, or European swallows as they are now known, do move incredibly large distances. So they go from South Africa all the way up into the UK and northern reaches of Europe. So that's one such migration. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We don't really get the enormous bat migrations that countries further to the north of Africa do. I'm trying to think which bird would be the absolute furthest migratory bird. I'm pretty sure that the steppe eagle is quite far up there. The white storks also up towards Germany, sometimes Croatia, all the way through Europe. Most of our migratory species either migrate in from Europe or Russia, or they migrate towards the northern and central parts of Africa. That's, for example, the kingfishers or the Wahlberg's eagles, which is a slightly smaller distance. Oh, so Jimmy, this wind. This is Starling was busy focusing on some berries, but he flew away as I stopped. This wind definitely unsettles all of the animals in this area. They really, really don't like it. Now, I must admit, the rain this morning in the middle of the day did take me considerably by surprise. I thought we were done with rain for the rest of our dry season, or pretty much done with rain. However, it did rain. I wouldn't call it heavily, but it certainly rained rather than just drizzled. And Kylie, you were wondering if we're likely to have any more heavy rain. I don't think so. But I have to be completely honest, Kylie, my weather predictions this year have been completely off. Every time I have tried to make a prediction, it has gone in the opposite direction. If I've said it's not going to rain, it rains. If I don't have my rain covers on, it rains. When I do have my rain covers on, it doesn't rain. So Kylie, I don't think if we do get any more rain over the next few days, it will be in little fits and starts of drizzle. Maybe that might, if we're lucky, might reach up to about 2 millimeters. While I make my way back towards the leopard sighting, see if I can't find you a nice view, why don't you jump on the back of the vehicle with James.
Now, we had a question come through about the difference between a pan and a pond and a dam. Catherine, it was from you. This, Catherine, is a pan. And a pan is a natural depression in the land that has normally been formed by wallowing animals. This has been formed by warthogs initially. Is that a piece of mud?
Yeah.
Dung?
Yeah.
Dung. Been formed by warthogs, and then buffalo, and then elephants, and all sorts of things have come and wallowed around here. So this is called a pan. And they form in an area where there's lots of clay in the soil. And so when the hole forms and the rain comes, it holds water, and that's what's called a pan. I guess it would be the same as a pond. I imagine we just don't use the term pond here. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what the etymology of the word pond is, or the etymology of the word pan, but they're the same kind of thing. A dam, of course, is completely distinct because it is man-made. A dam is a man-made wall or structure across a drainage line or stream or river that then stops the flow of the water initially, and that's how a dam is formed. And we've got a number of dams on this reserve, 1, 2, 3 that hold water. And then if you go to Buffelshoek, well, there are probably about 7 or 8 dams on Buffelshoek, a couple on Arathusa, and we build them out here mainly to hold water for the animals. This is a fairly, what should we say, controversial ecological practice, because it means that there's often water around when there wouldn't naturally be water around. Anyway, Catherine, thank you for that. That is the difference. Despite the foulness of the weather, there is still a lovely smell in the air, and every so often I get there's a very sweet scent to the air, and I don't know why, but it smells like there. You smell that? Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is, but it smells precisely like it did when I was in Cornwall, in England last year, running along the hedgerows in amongst the blackberries. And I don't know what the smell is. Let's have a quick look. There are a couple of flowers around here. I'm just going to turn that down because it's a bit noise in my ear. Let me get out here let's see. We'll smell all the different kinds of flowers. So, we have what looks like a species of Waltheria here. It might be that, Brian, if it's a very kind of, if you get far enough away from that, it might smell like that. That's got quite a sweet smell.
Maybe.
This has got a much stronger smell when you smell it. It's got sort of a sweet herby type of a smell, wouldn't you say, Brian? Yeah, sweet herby. Could be this actually, because it's in large they cover quite large areas, and it could be this as we drive through. Then there is Justicia flava, this beautiful yellow flower. Ooh. I don't think that has any scent at all. Try that, Brian. Of course, for Brian and I to be doing this, we are taking our lives in our hands for you, of course, because we both suffer from fairly nasty allergies.
Not that one.
I don't think it's this one. I think it's this. And then one more this side. Now, Brent Leo swears blind that this Senna Petitiana, or monkey pod, smells nice. Now, the leaves smell horrible. The leaves sort of smell, well, what do they smell like? They smell, I don't know, they just smell like sort of oil, nasty oil. And he says these smell nice. And I don't get any scent from them at all.
Oh, no, I can smell them.
Can you?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
No.
No. I think it's these.
It is very subtle. There is one more flower.
Is there?
Yeah.
What is it? Ah. The wild foxglove. And I don't think these smell either. Ugh. It actually smells like kind of really pungent chocolate.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Eh?
Oh, wow.
Like pungent chocolate.
Super cocoa chocolate.
Yes, super cocoa chocolate, exactly.
That's incredible.
What if, maybe it's that. Maybe it's that in very subtle, that at a distance.
That chocolate, yeah.
Might be
maybe.
that's what it is. It's these. It's this at a distance. There we go. Sort of, so imagine driving through a field of chocolate, if you like, and the chocolate giving up a gentle smell. And because there's so much of it all around the place, it smells quite subtle. But when you put it in your face, it's very powerful. Good. It's nice. Glad we discovered that. I've never smelt it. I don't think I've ever smelt one of them before. There we are. The wild foxglove, known for the cardioglycosides that it makes. Just going to keep an eye on the road here. There are tracks of a male leopard here. Carrie, I'm going to let Brian answer this one. You want to know if the thumb also has allergies. Brian, does the thumb also have allergies?
I think the thumb gives me allergies.
Do you think the thumb gives you allergies?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a difficult relationship, Brian.
Yeah, it is.
It's like
It's a love-hate relationship.
It is, yes, absolutely. So there are some leopard tracks on this road, and I'm trying to discern whether they are male or female and how old they are. Of course, it's been such a windy day that, you know, if they were sort of sometime today, they would look much older than they are because the wind is so strong. I'm not sure that they're male. Might be a female. Maybe shadows come hunting up in this area. That is possible. Turn the radio back up. All right, Jamie is back with the leopards, so I'm not going to spend too much time looking here. We're going to head off to the far east and see what we can find there. And back to those leopards.
We have made our way back to the mating leopards, and they've decided to take a little bit of a break from their activities that were keeping them occupied and spend a little bit of time, at least on Tingana's side, fast asleep. Thandi's less restful. She keeps lifting up her head. She's not really sleepy. She's also listening to something approaching us through the bush. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's elephants or buffalo. I suspect it's buffalo, just judging by the amount of oxpeckers that have come flying out. And of course, as you know, elephants don't really let oxpecker birds sit on them to pick off ticks. They aren't comfortable with it. So I suspect what she's hearing is buffalo moving in. Could be wrong though, it could be elephants. And if it is elephants, we might have a spectacular sighting with two members of the Big Five in one shot, potentially as the elephants chase our leopards away. But you never know. The elephants don't really enjoy the presence of other predators. Well, we watched the two of them earlier as they mated somewhere in the region of 11 times in half an hour. And Lenny was wondering, watching the way that they respond to each other. I mean, he growls at her, she growls at him. They hiss at each other and they move apart. And clearly, neither of them really, or they certainly don't give any indications that they're enjoying the whole experience. And Lenny was wondering a little bit about whether or not any studies have been conducted into whether there's any pleasure involved in the mating process for leopards or if they just do it for reproductive purposes. And the answer is they do it for reproductive purposes. What is she seeing? She's looking up again. Sorry, Lenny, I will get to your question in a moment. And the answer is it is a purely instinctive reproductive function. And the reason that the male still does it, even though he's not getting any enjoyment from the act, is because that is what his instinct tells him to do. It tells him to mate with her. And of course, as we spoke about earlier, that is the entire, or one of the most important biological drives of any species out here, is to reproduce and to pass on their genetic material. And the bigger you are, in terms of leopard dynamics, the bigger you are, the stronger you are, the more likely you are going to be able to gain a territory with lots of females in it and continue to mate with them. They have done studies into animals that mate for non-reproductive purposes. So whether it's for social bonding or whether it's for enjoyment, humans of course being one, dolphins are actually another. But within Africa itself, the bonobo monkeys also use sexual acts as a bonding experience between the groups and for pleasure rather than just purely reproductive purposes. But pretty much everything else out here does it purely for reproduction. Elephants, rhino, buffalo, our big cats, the leopards and the lions. It's purely to pass on their genetic material. Have there been studies done? Yes, probably, into the whole process. I know, of course, that plenty of studies have been done on the bonobo monkeys further north in Africa. They've been very, very intensely studied in terms of the way that sexual activity fits into their society. But for leopards, it is just to make babies. That's the whole purpose and the function of it. And actually, as I said, I actually think they resent the impact on their solitude. Sorry, I keep looking back over my shoulder. I'm just checking to see what it is that's got her attention. I don't think she managed to get any of the Dacre kill that Tingana was munching on. So if anything decided to come wandering through, she would small enough, obviously, for her to tackle, then she might well consider going after it. Now, it seems as though James has found a group of such antelope, so let's go and have a look.
See if you can spot the odd one out, everybody. There are probably 50 or 60 impala there, but they are not alone. See if you can see what I mean. Those are all impala. Those are impala. those are impala. There's a male impala. Those are all impala. It's an impala having a poo, but it's still an impala. Oh, there it is in the background. A wildebeest bull, and he's lurking amongst this lot simply for the protection that they afford him. He actually, I think this is the territorial bull of this area, so he's got a couple of clearings that he uses as his territory, but he will spend on a windy day like this when he can't hear anything or smell anything, he'll hang around with these impala, because they of course are very wily. Woo! Howling gale rolling through here. And so he is using them for safety in numbers. Bit of a gust coming through. And you'll see also that this is largely a nursery herd of impala, so only that one male. So he's found what he thinks is going to be his mating group. He is of course mistaken, because by the time mating comes around in the middle of May, he will be so thin and tired of defending a territory that he will be unable to perform. And he will lose this territory to a male who has timed things a bit differently. It's truly unpleasant in this particular part of the reserve. Is it not, Brian?
It is.
Let us move on. I think we'll go to the hyena den now and see if there's anything going on there. And if there isn't, we'll go across to Buffelshoek Dam and see if there's anything going on there. Cool. Back at the leopards, I'm very pleased to see. Hello, Isabella. Now, Isabella, you're going to have to tell me, because if I seem to recall that you weren't always 5. I'm sure you were 4 at one stage. Have you had a birthday recently, or am I completely mistaken? Isabella, you're just 5 years old at the moment, and you want to know if it snows here. No, Isabella, it doesn't snow here at all. And you know, it doesn't snow here. There's been so little snow here that there's actually no word for snow in the local language. So the local language, which is Xitsonga or Shangaan, there's no word for snow in that language. Isn't that amazing? Some of the South African languages do have a word for snow, because in some parts of South Africa it does snow a bit. Nothing like probably where you're from, but it does snow a bit. But just like where you are, you also wanted to know, does it hurt the animals? Just like where you are, the animals here will grow fur that they can cope with any kind of weather. So if the animals to an area are natural, they will be able to cope with any kind of weather that there is. So Isabella, sorry about the door, there is no snow in this particular area. The one word that I do know for snow, in one of the local languages of Zulu, which I think is our most beautiful local language, is Iqwa. A lovely word. Try and say that, Isabella. Iqwa. Iqwa. There's some guinea fowl just up ahead. Now, I made mention of these guinea fowl when we were talking about whether or not we could run away from things out here. And I forget whose question that was. I don't think it was Monique in London, was it, Kirsten? You're asking if we could get away from a hippo. Not even a guinea fowl could we get away from. Like I say, Michael Johnson, of course, the current world record holder, and he has been for 11 years, I think now, of the 400 meters, or the quarter mile. He ran it in just over 43 seconds. They reckon that a guinea fowl at full tilt could run the 400 meters in about 28 seconds. Now, I just think that is the most astonishing thing in the world. And I'd pay a lot of money to watch a guinea fowl beat Michael Johnson around 400 meters. Wouldn't that be incredible? And actually their colors, the blue on their heads, the lovely red helmet, really is spectacular amongst the green grass there of this late spring, at least late autumn flush of greenery. Right. Sorry, I don't think it was Monique in London, everybody. I'm not sure who it was, and I do apologise profusely for forgetting. It must be the winds blowing things out of my head, Brian. 'Cause, 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 'cause Hello, Red on YouTube. You want
Ice.
ice? Oh, ice. Oh, Red, you want to know how you say ice in Zulu? I actually don't know. We'll try and look it up for you. I don't know what ice is in Zulu. It's probably a very similar word to snow. Very nice question. Thank you, Red, on YouTube. The reason I couldn't understand it is because there are a number of different accents around South Africa. And Kirsten, who's directing right now, has an accent from the depths of Natal, or KwaZulu-Natal, where the vowel I is pronounced basically double A-H. So I wasn't quite... I was unable to hear ice. All I heard was ass. I didn't really understand that. Sorry about that, Red. We'll find out what ice is in Zulu. All right, let's go back to the leopards. We're heading on to the cut line and then to the hyenas. See you just now.
I was just thinking about the hyena den and whether or not they might be out and about this afternoon, or whether the wind will keep them indoors, so to speak, and sheltered away from any trouble. Tingana has now passed out completely. He is very, very content. You can actually see, she is hearing whatever I'm hearing in this block, but I still don't know what it is. I don't think it's an elephant. But she's looking intently off in that direction. I still think it might be a buffalo. Keep your eyes peeled. I don't see anything though. Whatever it is, it hasn't made its way towards us yet. Now, generally, on a windy day like today, any animals that are moving about are going to try and move into the wind rather than against the wind. So they want to make sure that they're moving with the smell, any scent of anything coming towards them rather than away from them. And that's just one of the ways that they compensate for the reduction in their sense of smell and their sense of hearing that this kind of weather causes. It's interesting to watch Thandi's behavior. She hasn't been settled at all. She definitely doesn't have the same full belly that he does. So she didn't get nearly as much of that Dacre kill, if any at all. And she's much more alert. She can't seem to quite find a comfortable spot. She's curled up tightly. It's such a... Witnessing something like this with a solitary cat like a leopard is such a contrast to the social animal that is the lion. Lions, when they lie together, we saw this with the Nkumas 2 days ago, they lie on top of each other and are quite content to go and greet and to rub their faces up against each other before flopping down, occasionally on top of each other's heads. You'll never see that with a mating pair of leopards. They might lie sort of maybe close together, but there's never really any contact except when they come together to mate. It seems as though there's another vehicle making its way into the sighting, so we might have to shuffle about to get them a good view. And just wait and see which direction they decide to come from. Look at that belly full of Dacre. This wind is hugely unpleasant. Very, very cold. That's why she is as tucked into a ball as she is. She's probably also feeling that. He's a bit warmer because he's got a fuller belly and is in the process of digesting that. But she is much hungrier and a bit cold and looks a little bit miserable. And it's been really lovely to have had these opportunities to spend time with Thandi. It's only this must be the 4th time I've ever seen her. And she really is a very pretty leopard. While we're watching them, we've got to see Thandi's head constantly going up, whereas Tingana's a little bit more comfortable. And Andy, you were wondering whether or not the big cats sleep soundly or whether they're sort of constantly on alert. And the answer is they do tend to sleep quite deeply, or at least they give off the appearance of sleeping very deeply. A couple of nights or 2 nights ago, we could actually see the Nkuma lioness's paw twitching while she dreamt. But all 4 paws actually, like she was running in her sleep. So they do sleep very, very deeply. But at the same time, it takes the slightest noise, the slightest smell, the slightest movement to jerk them out of that state. And in a split second, they can go from sleeping to on the alert without any kind of transition that you or I might need in that time where we wake up first thing in the morning and you're groggy and don't really know what's going on. Brent doesn't do that, however. Brent goes from horizontal to vertical and wide awake in a split seconds. Now, I think that most of the Dacre kill has long since been snuffled up by Tingana without sharing it at all with Thandi. Mr. Tuvok, you were wondering if, or would Thandi try and steal the kill from him whilst he was sleeping? Yes, she would go and try and have a snack of it, and chances are he'd probably wake up immediately and get defensive over it. But it's not unheard of for leopards to share kills. It just happened to be that that particular kill was quite small. She might have managed a bite or 2. We often see males and females sharing something like an impala kill, for example, so it does occur. It just is slightly more unlikely with a tiny kill. But she would definitely, leopards are opportunists, and when an opportunity presents itself, if it did, that he was asleep, she would definitely try and sneak her way in there. I just want to make a plan with this earpiece, and I wonder if I can. I'm looking for gaffer tape. There's nothing out here that you can't fix without, or with, if you, what's the saying? If you can't fix it, you haven't used enough gaffer tape. And Jeandre has just very kindly handed me some, and I'm going to try and use that as a way of sorting myself out here. I thought I had fixed it, but it appears that I have not. Thank you, Jeandre. Our cameramen, of course, all carry gaffer tape with them at all times, which is most handy. Okay. I've now thoroughly secured my earpiece, and it seems to be working. That will definitely help matters. Otherwise, I was going to be stuck without communication with the outside world. I'm just overkilling it now and applying an extra piece. There we go. I may not be able to now leave the car without untangling myself completely, but that should hold. I'll try and show you, but it's stuck. No, it's completely stuck. Okay, you'll just have to take my word for it. That was what I was currently occupied doing. The role of gaffer tape, of course, playing a very important role in what we do. Thank you. All sorted out, and I can hear your questions now coming through clearly. It'll be interesting to see if we're correct about the fact that these two leopards have come now to the end of their mating period, I would suspect that they've gone their separate ways. I actually thought that earlier, to be completely honest, just judging by the fact that I saw Tingana's tracks on their own yesterday morning. I really thought they'd already gone off on their separate ways, but apparently not. Now, Anne, a little bit earlier you asked about the frequency of their activity and how long they've been mating for. And it's interesting that they were sort of, when we arrived, they were incredibly active. They're now fast asleep, and you can see how it evens out. So you get those bursts of activity from them, mating every 2 or so minutes, and then you get these periods for an hour or so where they just lie down and go back to sleep. So it does sort of balance out a little bit in terms of their bursts of activity versus their bouts of laziness, I suppose is what you could call it. And it roughly equates to once every 10 to 15 minutes if you average it out over the entire period during which they mate. It's been quite a long estrus cycle. I was trying to do the calculations. It was definitely 5 days ago that they were first seen. We didn't see them. They were south of our boundary, and then they moved north into here. And Tingana's done he's led her on a full loop around back towards Hoffman's and then back in here again. And I'm quite interested by how much time he's decided to spend here and why he hasn't moved further afield, probably just because he's occupied with her. I actually thought I saw a drag mark earlier, which I was very keen to follow if it was a mark from Karula. But I spent quite a long time looking at it and then decided that perhaps it was the drag mark from her kill that he stole. If indeed it was Karula's kill, we don't know that for absolute certainty. We think that is the case, but we don't know it. I mean, we could be sitting here and Karula could pop out, which would be very interesting. I know that it has happened before. At the moment, however, they don't seem to be showing any sign of stirring. Oh, Brian? Well, we've discussed quite a lot about the leopard's different territories and the fact that Thandi's territory is outside of this area, but that Tingana has brought her into the center of Karula's territory. And Brian was wondering, what is the sort of average size of a leopard's territory? And the answer to that is that it actually differs from place to place. So rather than give you the average, I'll describe exactly what I mean. In the northern Sabi Sands, on average, the leopards have far larger territories than the leopards do towards the south, towards the rivers. And that's because there's far more competition for territories around a river. It's a nicer territory for a leopard. And in general, the female's territory is much, much smaller than that of the male. So Karula has a territory of about, I think it's decreased a little bit. It was originally around 4,000 hectares. It's now decreased to probably around 2, just because I think her age is leading her to reduce her territory a little bit. Tingana's would be much larger. Tingana's would be around 4,000 hectares. Whereas if you go across down towards the riverine areas, let's say around the Sabi River or around the Sand River, you get territories of between 200 to 400 hectares, so much smaller than the territories of the leopards in this area, and much higher leopard densities. But Karula has a particularly large territory, and in fact, at one point, according to research from Panthera, she had the largest territory of any female leopard in the Sabi Sands. And you can see it within the genetic lines as well. The leopards in more favored territory areas, so around rivers, tend to be much larger, much stronger than those of the northern areas. And you can see that, we could see that quite clearly in the bloodline between Karula and Shadow and Thandi when compared with Kwetile. Now, Kwetile, whenever I only got to saw her, let's try that whole sentence again. I only got to see her it's fantastic English. I only got to see her a couple of times, but just having watched Thandi walk past the vehicle now, there was a tremendous difference between the height and the size of Quatile when compared to Karula and her two daughters. Quatile was much, much larger, and that's those riverine blood genetics coming through, as opposed to the slightly shorter leopards of this area. I mean, Thandi is minuscule. She really is a tiny little leopard. She's beautiful and she's perfect and compact, and of course there's great strength within any leopard, but she is very small. That being said, the Addison male, who is up towards the sort of western areas of Arathusa and then onto Elephant Plains, is one of the largest leopards, if not the largest leopard Asabi Sands has ever seen. Back over to James. He's got a flighted creature for you.
There's a beautiful bird, everyone, called an African hoopoe. And those of you who are watching in the United Kingdom will know that you get a hoopoe there, and possibly in other parts of Europe as well, closely related to that one there, the hoopoe. And in Afrikaans, it's interestingly called the hoop hoop. I'm just trying to find a picture of it, because there are a number of different kinds of African hoopoes, and I'm going to play you the call now. There we go. Isn't that nice? I think it's such a lovely call. Anyway, that is the African hoopoe. You saw what it looked like, so I shan't show you a picture on the phone. I was trying to see if that was a male or a female. You can tell from the windows when they fly, but I was looking at the phone when it flew off, so I couldn't tell if that was a male or female. Now, that long bills are often associated with nectar-feeding birds. In that particular bird, it isn't. It is known as a prober, which means it probes under the bark of various trees and possibly into the ground as well for various grubs and termites and other invertebrates that form the bulk of its diet. Long probing bill, the African hoopoe. And its most notable cousin in this particular area is called the green wood hoopoe. There's the most miserable looking Egyptian goose I've ever seen. It's recovered its decorum. It was sitting there and all of its feathers were fluffed out. It looked like it had just run through a hedge. There it goes. Let me quickly show you the green wood hoopoe, simply because it's actually quite a pretty bird. It's not any sun breaking through, is it? No, it's just the colour. So there is the green wood hoopoe, and it's also got that long probing beak, but it's a lot more colourful than its more famous cousin. There we go. And they live in flocks, loud birds, and they are known in Zulu as Guhlega Bafazi, which means the laughing woman, because they make a cackling laugh like no woman I've ever heard before, but perhaps the Zulu women of old used to laugh in a slightly different fashion from the way they do now. Guhlega Bafazi. Abafazi, women. Schläger, laugh. It's always a good idea to schläger every day, don't you think, Brian?
Yep.
Yes, it brings warmth to the soul. Where a wind like this brings nothing but freezingness to the body. Aqua, a profoundly brilliant question from you. Let me just negotiate this particularly difficult piece of road, and then I will address your very nice conservation inquiry. So, Aqua, you want to know, would an area like this ever be used for the reintroduction of a rare species? And you give two very nice examples there. One, the brown hyena, and two, the sable antelope. Let's address the hyena first. Brown hyena don't occur here, never have in great profusion. They are far more suited to the drier desert climates, go up into the Kalahari and even up into the Namib Desert. So they tend to be found more on the high veld where the rainfall is under 400 millimeters a year. That is just under 12 inches a year. So say about 13 or 14 inches a year. That's the kind of area where you're going to find a brown hyena. Here, although it's still semi-arid, we have about 600 millimeters a year, or about 24 in a good year, 24 inches of rain a year. Then you will find mainly the spotted hyena will take over from the brown hyena. And I mean, they don't really compete. They're both scavengers, but the brown hyena will scavenge almost exclusively, whereas the spotted hyena is actually a very accomplished hunter. So no, they wouldn't introduce brown hyenas here simply because this is not the ideal habitat for them. Sable, now they have tried to reintroduce sable here, and there have been a number of different attempts, some at Londolozi down south. I don't know if there have been any here. I suspect there may have been. I mean, quarantine clearings was used to quarantine various introduced animals and probably exported animals at various stages. So it may have been sable at one stage. But the problem with introducing sable to the Sabi Sands, at Londolozi was twofold. The first issue they had was that those sable were bred in captivity and didn't know what a lion was. The lions, of course, walked onto the clearing when those sable were released and ate them all, basically. I think they killed 5 or 6 a night, devoured them all, and that was the end of that experience. So you've got to have them predator aware before you can release them into an area. And conservation reintroduction stories are littered with ridiculous stories like that, where people introduce wildebeest that have been born in captivity. They're very used to human beings. They see a lion and they walk up to it, and then the lion eats it, and they're all very surprised. Seems entirely logical. So that's been the one part of the sable reintroduction. The other part is that the area doesn't have sable for a very good reason. It doesn't have sable, and sable used to be so numerous in the Sabi Sands that they shot them for rations. They'd shoot them to give staff meat. There are now none left anymore, and that is simply because of us, human beings, especially private landowners, who have put water all over their land. So they've put dams all over the place, and that means that sable can't survive in this area. They get outcompeted by zebra and impala, and they cannot get away from the water enough to have their babies where lions won't come and eat them, and so it would be pointless to reintroduce sable to this particular area. In other parts of the Kruger where they are closing water points, absolutely, and I think they probably will do that in the near future, especially with even more rare antelope species like roan. It's a brilliant question. Thank you very much, Aqua. I suppose they could use it. I mean, they might introduce a cheetah here, perhaps a wild dog, but probably not. Beard, a nice question. What is it about, and I don't know if I can answer it, what is it about brown hyena that makes them prefer drier areas? I think it's the lack of competition, basically. So if you were to put a brown hyena into an area like this, take out the lions, or halve the concentration of lions and take out the spotted hyenas, I'm sure they'd be absolutely fine here. I think they're better adapted to desert environments, meaning that they probably don't need water. Well, a lot of the predators are almost water independent, but it basically means they probably don't need to drink ever. They are more adapted to scavenging small animals. They can live on their own. They don't have to live in the group like the spotted hyena. And group living, the more sparse prey becomes, the more group living as a predator becomes an unviable option. So you'll often find the prides of lions in very dry areas like Namibia and the Kalahari are smaller than they would be in a place like this. You won't find giant prides of 20 or 30 like you do sometimes here or up in the Serengeti. So I think it's just an adaptation, not so much for the dryness, but the paucity of prey, and they're probably slightly more Catholic diets. So they're probably, although a spotted hyena will eat just about anything, a brown hyena you'll probably find will eat even more than just about anything. Not hunters, much more scavengers. I hope that answers your question. Right, let's go back to the leopards. We're on our way to Buffelshoek Dam.
Well, they just mated once again. It was actually quite a violent mating session. He held her down for a long time. And just looking at the way that he's walking, he is very, very uncomfortable. You can see he's not even quite sure how to lie down. It almost looks as though his hips hurt. I can't decide if it's an injury to the leg or if it is just sensitivity from mating over the last few days. We'll have to I don't think we'll have the answer to that until we see him in a couple of days' time, once they've left each other. I think she might even be thinking about going again. Look at how gingerly he's lowering himself. He is not comfortable. I'm trying to think of a good size comparison to give you all a sense of scale as we watch her sit like that. And probably she is the size of, at least in terms of height, a small German Shepherd or Alsatian dog. It's, in fact, even smaller than that in terms of height. Oh, what's she seen? No. She's just seen the opportunity to find a more comfortable spot. I thought she was about to go into stalk mode. Now, Richard, apparently you've been quite concerned about Tingana's injury. I can't see what is bothering him, and I can't. Usually when an animal limps, you can... She's looking off in the direction of those noises again. You can't really... You can usually easily judge which leg it is that's hurting or which foot it is that's hurting. But watching him, it looks as though... That's what made me say it's either his hips, something happened to his hips, or it is just general chafing and sensitivity. That is a distinct possibility. I've seen him do that before after spending time mating with Karula, where he just clearly was exceptionally discomforted. There she goes again. Always accompanied by that low growling purr of hers. And Donna, as we watch Thandi once again go into her dance of seduction, you were wondering if they get arthritis. And the answer is yes, I think that does occasionally occur. I'm going to try and just get us a fractionally closer, not closer, just better view. I'm going to stop there just because she's quite restless, so she could end up anywhere. Donna, as far as I know, leopards can get arthritis, but it is quite rare. For example, I know that elephants can get arthritis, but it generally occurs far more commonly in captivity than it does in the wild. And the same could be said would be most likely with the big cats. So it is almost sort of what he looks like he's got, though. It looks like an arthritic discomfort. And arthritis in humans does tend to get worse when it's cold, when the temperatures are cold. It might also be that it's an old injury that, because it is so cold, is playing up a little bit. There is nothing more beautiful and graceful than watching a leopard move. Whether they're walking or just that little hop over the fallen marula tree that she just did. They have such grace and control over their movements. Except Tingana occasionally. Hey boy, after you dropped that warthog out of the tree and fell out yourself. There she goes again. That head rub. She even dislodged some bark there. jumping straight over him. He really, really doesn't want to get up. Here we go. That noise is indescribable. The sound that they make. It's something that you don't really expect them to sound like. Shame, Tingana. You really don't look very comfortable at all. Neither does she. She's still growling at him. They're still growling at each other. Crouching. I just want to watch him carefully for a moment. The way that he's moving, to try and figure out what it is that's bothering him. It seems like a sort of an overall stiffness almost. Right, then settle down again for now. Sarah, happy 4th birthday to you. I'm glad that you are watching our show and I hope that you're enjoying it. Very chilly here. Sarah wants to know if you can tell the identity of individual leopards or lions from their tracks. And it's so funny that you should ask that, Sarah. I'm going to show you what we use, or what I've been using. I've started a little project. These are calipers, and I've been using them to measure the different leopards' tracks. So what I do is I slide it open. In theory, it doesn't want to slide open now. Oh yes, that's how it works. Never mind. I'm an idiot. I'm an absolute idiot. The top part goes at the top of the toe, where the toe is, and the bottom part goes where the back part of the paw falls, and that's how I've been measuring the tracks. And what I've been trying to do, I haven't finished yet, but what I've been trying to do is measure the different tracks of each leopard that I see, or when I know which leopard it was that walked down that road. And I'm building up different track sizes for each individual leopard and lion. It's taken me quite a long time to do, but it's a project that I've been doing with all of the viewers, and I'm hoping I'm going to get to the point where just by judging from the size of the track, I can tell you which particular leopard it is. Now, Sarah, this is what a leopard track looks like. And Susan, this is also for you. Susan's watching in Australia and wants to know the difference between a leopard and a lion track. Leopard's track is incredibly neat, and it's listed as roughly 10 centimeters. Karula's back track, if I remember correctly, was somewhere around 8 centimeters, which is roughly about just less than 4 inches in length. Wula's back pad was closer to 10, and so was Tingana's. They were around sort of 10, 10.2, 10.4. So that's the rough size of a leopard track. They're very, very neat, very in proportion. The toes quite small and delicate, beautiful little tracks. Now, this isn't the best picture. This actually really isn't the best picture at all of a lion track, so I almost want to say that this is not a good example, because you cannot see in this picture that the 3 lobes at the back of a lion track are very clear. When I measured the tracks of the Nkuhumas 2 days ago, when they walked down to the pan, the smallest foot that I measured there was 14 centimeters. So even for a young lion, their feet are considerably larger than those of a leopard, and that's one of the best ways to tell the difference between the tracks. If you see a tiny paw print that is a cat track, so with the lobes at the back, but it's all on its own, then you know that it is a leopard and not a lion, because a lion that would have to have feet that small would be a cub that would never ever be walking on its own. So if you see one set of tracks like that, the 14 centimeters is, what is that? That's roughly 6-ish inches, maybe a bit less, around 6 inches. So there is a considerable difference. In the case of Karula's tracks, or a lion track, is basically double the size of a female leopard track and much larger than that of a male. Their toes are also much larger, big round toes. Oh. Such an unhappy looking girl. Definitely doesn't look happy, so I'll use to rest and relax and catch up on some energy. Let's go over to James and see what he's found in Buffelshoek Dam.
Hello everyone, here we find ourselves at the rippling waters of Buffelshoek Dam, where a lone hippo, perhaps our old friend Bob, the bachelor of Buffelshoek, is lying much more comfortably, I suspect, than his colleague across in Arathusa. The wind is now a true foulness in our lives, and indeed in that hippopotamus's as he plunges his head below the next gust as it blows across the surface of this murky water. Now, light should be perfectly beautiful right now. The sun would be setting off to the left-hand side of your screen there. Today, however, just a very thick blanket of grey gunmetal clouds scudding across the sky. Oh, Brian, I heard a red-billed buffalo weaver in its nest. I'm so glad Jamie's got those leopards today, because I've got to tell you, otherwise, everybody, this would have been a trying game drive. We've not seen a great deal today, but we found a couple of very nice little things, I suppose, as well as the discovery of the immensely powerful chocolate-smelling wild foxglove. You can see that you get pretty seasick today if you're a red-billed buffalo weaver. There one comes. No, there he's just below. Down. There, yes! Yes! Red-billed buffalo weaver. See if he goes into his nest. There we go. Now there are a few of them in there. You can actually now see their shadows moving about there. Not sure how sheltered from the wind they're going to be, but I bet they're slightly more sheltered than we are. There, you can see them a little bit better there. But you can also hear a howling wind. Okay, let's carry on. Let's confess, it has got quite chillsome out here. I was saying to Brian, I don't think the temperature has dropped at all. It's just a question of the air actually eventually getting through our clothes. Hello Jim, you're on YouTube. I'm just going to turn some lights on now. You want to know about hippopotamus and their relationship with the other water-dwelling large animal that we get out here, and that is the crocodile, the Nile crocodile. And how often do crocs ever try and eat hippos? Crocs might try and eat very small hippos, Jim, but they wouldn't have a go at a large hippo like that. That would be completely impossible, because they're just too big. But also, little hippos are normally protected by a whole pod of larger hippos, so it's unlikely that crocs would have a go at them either. The other thing to note is that hippopotamus don't tolerate crocs really. So if they feel like there's any kind of threat, and often they have actually been seen chasing crocodiles off their own prey, sometimes seemingly in order to save the prey, and sometimes in order to snack on it themselves. Hippo do sometimes eat a bit of meat and carrion if they're feeling a little bit nutritionally stressed. So that's the kind of relationship that they have. I've never seen a crocodile in there. I know crocodiles have been seen in there. And it's one of the reasons that were somebody to say, if I give you $100,000, will you swim across that dam? I would say no. Because so often people have been bitten by crocodiles in pieces of water that they seemingly know, but have been then ambushed by crocs. And there's a great example of it in a reserve I used to work called Ngala, where a chap who's still a ranger to this day in Namibia, his name's Chris Buckus, and I think he does some amazing conservation work in Namibia at the moment, but he's only got one arm. And he's got one arm because at Ngala there was a dam called Oppi Dam, and his guest said, well, I don't know if his guest said it or he was hot one day and he decided that he'd like to go and have a swim in the dam. I think that's how it went. But he got in there and he'd never seen a crocodile in there, and lo and behold, that one day a croc grabbed him by the arm and took it off at the elbow. So he has still managed to make an amazing career out of conservation and guiding. but he did lose his arm to a crocodile. So I wouldn't be swimming in Buffelshoek Dam, nor any other dam in the Greater Kruger National Park. It really is getting quite dark at the moment now. We will peer into the greenery and see if we can find anything interesting to see. Birds are all starting to think about going to sleep now. And one of the best sightings I ever had of birds, I've seen it a few times, of birds roosting is when you find those grey-hooded helmet shrikes. And they form a little line, or even apelus. They form a little line on a branch, and they huddle together and kind of push against each other, and you can just see them. They look like little balls of cotton wool trying to wait out a windy evening like this. Maybe we'll see something like that. You can see a mint-coloured African migrant, my favourite butterfly, in this tree here, hanging on for dear life. That's just a slightly different coloured bits of that tree there. Is a mint-coloured African migrant. Let me just quickly jump out and hold the bush still, mainly for my own benefit, so that I don't freeze to death. Can you see them, Brian?
I can.
Ooh. And you know what else is here, Brian? I wonder if this thing hasn't just come out of the chrysalis. There's an old chrysalis here, an open one. I'll break it off and bring it. This butterfly has no further use for it. Come on. That's actually quite nice. I've unfortunately broken it while I was trying to take it off. But that there, everybody, is the chrysalis.
Hold on.
No.
I have to adjust it for the light.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, here we go.
So that's the...
Yeah, very nice.
That was the chrysalis of the African migrant, and it came out of there. Now remember, a chrysalis is it's the little casing that a butterfly or caterpillar will go into and make for itself when it turns into this amorphous gloop of totally indistinguishable parts before then that gloop reforms into the incredible thing that is the butterfly. And that whole process, the hollow metabolic process, is absolutely unbelievable. Link to the leopards, they're mating.
Oh dear. Oh well, you just missed the mating again. And she's now rolling over on her back. Again, quite violent. I was trying to get a good view of Tingana to see whether or not I can see any visible injuries on him. There's a mark around his right hip, but I can't tell you if that's just a mark or if there is an actual injury there or not. He also now looks unimpressed with life. There's nothing more stunning than the eyes of a leopard. Each and every one has a slightly different color to them. In his case, they look almost sort of grey-green, at least in this light. Not like the bright blue eyes of Umbula. He does have an injury there. Our cat is watching in Tampa. She's just sort of seeing the irritation in Tingana and wondering whether a male leopard has ever killed a female in the process, in this kind of process, since he does look so sick and tired of her by now. And cat, sorry, I'm trying to multitask here by getting my binoculars out. I have them all hidden away in case of rain, and I think I can actually see there's an injury around his back right leg. It's not very deep, at least it doesn't look very deep, but I'm struggling to see it properly. in the dark. It just, I mean, from what I'm looking at, it looks like a little cut. Doesn't look like it is too serious. But that could be what is causing him this discomfort. And that might be that it's more bruised than anything else. In fact, it almost looks a bit swollen around that knee joint. Up, you can sort of see where the black of the spots has been disturbed and fluffed up. And I think that's what's causing him this discomfort. But back to Kat's question, and that probably, by the way, was inflicted by her claws hooking into his fur when she kicked him off her. Kat, I've never heard of a male leopard killing a female. It's not impossible that that could happen. It's very, very unlikely, but not impossible. Sometimes the instinct, the kill instinct could be triggered, I suppose, especially in that violence and annoyance that they display. I would say it's very unusual. I've heard of it occurring a lot with, not a lot, but more frequently with rhino. I've heard of rhinos killing the females, but that's slightly different because instead of having this induced ovulation that leopards have where they need to constantly mate, the rhinos have a similar but slightly different method in order to make sure that they've got the best mating male possible, the best genetics possible, and that is that they reject the male. All the attentions. Oh, here we go again. Hello, gorgeous. They reject the attentions of the males for about 2 weeks. They have a 2-week courting period. Here we go again. Oh, he's so cross. Look at that size difference between their heads. He's basically double her size. And those low rumbling growls as well. Ooh, she might have taken his warning. She's moved away. You can see how the wind's unsettled her as well a little bit. Let's just top up the light a little bit. I love watching leopards at this time of day. They're too beautiful. Her eyes, in contrast, are sort of a deep brown, hazel color. Kat, I've actually heard of lions on the odd occasion killing the female that's been trying to mate with them. So it does happen with lions. I'll ask the other guides as well whether or not they've ever heard of or ever witnessed a case of a male killing a female out of frustration. Because it does, I mean, these animals ultimately are predators. That is what they are built to do, designed to do. And occasionally that instinct, it makes sense to me that that instinct could actually kick in a situation where they are irritated or irritable with each other. Now we shall wait and see whether tomorrow their sets of tracks go off in different directions, or whether they are still together. And Susan, you were wondering which leopard decides to leave first. Is it the male or the female? And I don't think that there's much of a set pattern. It's probably the female that moves off or chooses to move off, because the male, when they're mating, usually moves where he wants to move, and she just follows behind him. She follows him. Whereas with these guys, or with leopards, if she decides she wants to go, off she goes. So the female might be the one that sort of initiates the separation, but I think it's more a not mutual decision, they just don't go in the same direction anymore. Raisa, thank you so much for responding to my question about Thandi's offspring, whether or not she has any. Raisa tells me that the only one that she knows of that has survived was a male that would be roughly the same age as Quarantine and Kanyuma, Karula's, Thandi's actually younger brothers. And that was a proper hiss he just gave her. I think we're coming to the end here. Apparently, this male was known as Bahuti male, and he was born roughly around 2012. And his sister, or his female litter mate, was apparently killed by lions at around 8 months old. So thank you so much, Raisa. I really appreciate that. I had no idea. This is one of the first times, the last few months have been the first time that I've ever seen this leopard. So incredibly useful to have that background knowledge. She's going to try again. He's not appreciating it. That was you probably can't hear it just because of the wind howling, but he, just like a domestic cat, went at her. He's really not impressed. He's sore, he's tired. There we go. All right, if you insist, if I have to. There's an injury on his back right leg. Ouch. Okay, that's where this pain is coming from. And his uncomfortable limp. It's because he's injured himself. I don't even think that was inflicted by her. And as night starts to settle, the leopards are thinking of getting active. But most of our birds are resting and going to bed. Let's see the one that James has found.
Isn't that awesome, everybody? Look at that. It's the most incredible sighting we've had all day, isn't it, Brian?
It's amazing.
Gee whiz. Wow. It's a bird. I was talking about those birds huddling in the foliage to try and stay warm and go to sleep. That's one of them there, believe it or not. Bit of grey on top, bit of white underneath, and most likely, in fact almost unquestionably, a ring-necked dove trying to get a little peace in the night, so I think we'll just carry on and leave it alone. I just wanted to show you quickly that the birds are going to sleep already because it is, well, I suppose it is getting on a bit. It's not that late yet. The leopards are very active today. I wonder if the cold hasn't had something to do with their levels of activity. Perhaps they would have been slightly less enthusiastic about each other on a hotter day. Certainly the other day when we sat with them for a long time, they weren't mating quite as vociferously or enthusiastically as they are now. Vociferously, of course, is completely the wrong adverb to use. In fact, I'm embarrassed by it. Oh, there's also a batelier up there. I'll just show you the silhouette of a batelier eagle. See it there, Brian?
Yep.
There it is, everyone. Batelier, silhouette, in the darkness, sleeping. It's actually often in this tree, you know. And all around this area there's definitely a pair of them. And then I think we've got the attendant offspring from a few breedings. One of about 4 years old and the other that has just come into adult plumage. I think they both still hang around in their parents' territory. binocular. I don't know which one that one is. Not the most epic Battalier sighting we've ever had, Brian, but, you know, in the context of the day, not too bad. Right, let's go back to the leopards.
She's up and moving. Coming right behind Jean-Andre. There she is. And off she goes. I wonder if we have just been witness to the separation of these two. You know, judging by his reaction and his reluctance to mate with her, she might have decided to move on and go off in a different direction. I don't know. I'm not going to try and follow her, not through that incredibly dense block. Off-road in the dark is going to be exceptionally tricky. So we'll stick with him for now, and we'll see if she really has left or if she's not going to come back and join us once again. Let me just shine to the left very quickly. No, I definitely can't see her. She might have... Oh, there she is. Yes, I can definitely see her. She's sitting right next to me. How cool is that? It spots through the trees. She might also be hungry. Her stomach pushing for a meal. Now that is such an iconic image. The leopard spots in the darkness. She might also just have moved off for a discreet spot to defecate. Trying to get the angle of my light right. But this is absolutely beautiful. So she will move off. If she does decide to move off tonight, she'll go out, probably go hunting. And you can just imagine, you know how we always speak about the fact that nights like these are terrifying for the prey animals. Tonight is going to be no exception. They are going to be in pitch darkness with wind howling around them, and the herds of impala and wildebeest and zebra are going to spend the night in terror. I'm going to swap hands. I might be able to get a better angle from here. There we go. Go ahead, Mike.
My movie unit, do you mind if I approach?
Copy that. You're more than welcome. You've got my visual, right?
Yes, that's affirmative. Any approach angle? Is it right if I just continue this road?
That's affirmative. She looks like she's going to get mobile now. He's still lying right on my right-hand side, so on the southern side of me.
All right, copy that. So,
There we go. We've got an extraordinary view of the leopard. I am curious to see if we have actually... I've never seen the moment that leopards decide to go separate ways. I've never actually witnessed that separation. I've only ever seen them mating together and then discovered them the next day separated. But she looks like she's settled down there for now. She's actually lying down. And she might sleep a little bit. But yes, as I said, if she does go her separate ways, then she's going to go right looking for something to eat. She's got quite an empty belly, so she will be hungry after the days of exhausting activity that she's been putting them both through. He's also going to be thinking about it. I've been trying to puzzle out the nature of that injury. and whether or not it was caused by her, or whether it was caused by whatever they were hunting. Maybe he didn't steal that kill. Maybe that was actually from the hunt he did himself or carried out himself when he went to go and catch that duiker. That's also a distinct possibility. I'm just waiting for Mike from Cheetah Plains to come and join us. I'm also keeping half an eye out on what she's going to do and where she's going to go. It was quite a deep injury, and it could have, if it was a duiker that he managed to find this morning, maybe he did hunt it himself. And a sharp duiker horn or a duiker hoof could inflict an injury like that. It just, to me, looked the wrong shape and in the wrong position for it to be an injury that was acquired during any kind of mating activities. And I think that is probably a more likely explanation. But it definitely looked a bit uncomfortable, and it's clearly giving him some grief. But because it's so fresh, that might be why he's showing signs of being in as much pain as he is, just because it's a new injury. It should heal up incredibly quickly. It's amazing how resilient these animals truly are. And Deborah, I think you're on the same page as I am. Deborah was just suggesting it might have been a horn from an antelope. I think that's a distinct possibility. Could have been a stab, and it's right in that knee joint of his leg, because of course leopards have extended metatarsals, so what we sometimes incorrectly think of as their knee is actually their ankle, and the knee is further up the leg towards, or closer towards the main part of the body. I need to get onto the Game Drive channel. Mike said that he could see me and that he was making his way in, but oh, there we go. There we go. He has managed it. He has managed to find us. Okay. So I don't have to... Maybe I do have to guide him in. That's lovely. We might even get some nice backlighting. And he's gone again. Where's he going? Oh. Hi. All right. I'm going to try and get hold of Mike, guide him in here. While I do, I'm going to send you back to James.
Nothing to report this end, everyone. We've come to Twin Dams, where there is water for the first time in some time. That's the dam wall over there, and I guess I can show Catherine what the difference between a dam and a pan is in this particular area. If we stop over here and then pan off to the left-hand side, this is a dam wall, Catherine, if you're still watching, and down below it is the water of the dam. So you can see that this kind of area has been man-made. And it's called Twin Dams because there was a big dam, I think, across the Lulwati drainage line, just down there. That bird that you can hear, the water dickop, or water thickney. Let's just have a listen. It's quite a nice sound of the African night. It's quite common. See if we can spot him. There they are, two of them. A water thickney. Fairly indistinct in this light, but I mean very much like those crown plovers that we saw earlier on, except they are nocturnal. There we go. Is that the highlight of our evening, Brian?
Definitely.
Very nice sighting. Two water dickle. Well done. And one Egyptian goose. Don't forget the Egyptian goose. There they go. Hello, Jane. We were talking about harbingers the other day, and the bird that is most often used as the harbinger of doom in literature is the crow. And you want to know if we get any ravens or crows in this area. Jane, sometimes the pied crow, which is an indigenous species, will pop through here. They can be nomadic, but we don't get them often. They tend to concentrate far more in farmland and around human habitation than they do in the wild areas of South Africa. But yes, the pied crow is the most obvious one. Not often though. I have seen them here once, but I haven't seen one for a long time. The pied crow, which is obviously pied, black and white, is what pied means. And then there are a number of other, I think there are about 4 raven or corvus species that we get in South Africa. The pied crow is by far the most common. Nice question. Apparently the most intelligent birds, or some of the most intelligent birds that we're supposed to get here. And you will never ever find one run over on the road, or highly unlikely that you'll ever find one run over on the road. They're far too wily, far too clever. They'll move out the way always. So we're going to head back sort of towards quarantine clearings for the last few minutes of the drive, see what's come out into the clearings, and I suspect there'll be quite a lot coming out. No tracks at all of the Djuma Pride from last night. Now, I can only assume that given how much activity there's been on the reserve today, that they headed into that block where the Mvubu hyena den was, or sort of between there and the old Gallagher shortcut den, because it is very thick in there. And we haven't found their tracks coming out. That's the kind of the block they were in already last night. So maybe they killed something in there sometime during the night and they just haven't emerged. I don't know. So we'll go and look around quarantine and see if they don't pop out at some stage. So that's the 5 lionesses of the Djuma Pride. We didn't see today, and we didn't see their tracks. Often we'll watch them for 2 or 3 days, and then their tracks will very obviously cross sort of east or west out of the reserve, or north. Very seldom south, because that's Styx territory. A couple of eyes in the trees up ahead here. I think they're impala. Oh, Chris Rogue. Sorry, I didn't update you all. You wanted to, there's some kudu in there. I'm just going to pick the light off them. Chris Rogue, I did go to the hyena den. They were all asleep, or I didn't see any there. And I'm pretty sure that all the youngsters were just down bedding inside, huddling. So we did go and have a look. We sat there for about 5 minutes, but there was nothing going on there at all, Chris. I forgot to tell you all about that. Sorry about that. They will now, the adults will probably start to get moving and go on their nightly forage, and I don't think the cubs are going to come too far out of that termite mountain. Brian and I were sorely tempted to climb in there with them, weren't we, Brian? Probably a bit smelly, hey?
That's okay. Would have been warm.
It would have been warm, yes. A little smelly, but very warm. This hand is now getting cold, so I'll swap it. Now, I'm sure those of you who live in North America and Britain and other parts of Eurasia possibly think that we're being ridiculous when we say it's cold. It's probably about 14 degrees Celsius now, which is, well, what is that? That's at least, it's probably 54 degrees Fahrenheit, which isn't particularly freezing, is it? It just feels very cold to us. Very good question from Alice in Ohio, who says, if I am cold, why don't I wear long pants? 2 reasons. Firstly, when I started off the drive, 3 reasons. When I started off the drive, I wasn't that cold. Secondly, I hate the feeling of long pants. I always have. From when I was a very small boy, I've always hated the feeling of long pants. And thirdly, by wearing long pants now, I'd be admitting that the summer is over and that the winter is here, which it isn't quite yet. And so I'm going to keep the short pants for as long as I can. I don't think I wore long pants last year at all, because we didn't have a very cold winter. So I managed to get through it without. I actually don't have any long pants here that would be suitable. So I shall just have to stick to my short pants and and a blanket. I'm laughing because Kirsten says that my story about my pants was very riveting. Thank you, Kirsten. If there's one person in the camp who's more sarcastic than I am, it is Kirsten McLennan-Smith. Zoe, you say that my light shining skills have become much more skillful. Well, thank you. I don't know how you've noticed this. Perhaps it's less of this sort of thing while I'm talking to you. It probably makes a big difference. I'm not sure that I've spotted any more animals with it, but perhaps the glare off the dashboard isn't quite as bright and unpleasant as it used to be. Thank you for that, Zoe. One does what one can, you know. Even if that happens to be very little, as the case today. We're now not too far from where those mating leopards are. I'm not sure if they're still mating. I don't think they are. I think they're having a bit of a break. A brief hiatus before one of them gets too cold and they decide to have another go, or probably go off and hunt something. There's a flash of eyes there. It may have been a spider. Oh, it's very, very small. It is a spider. You won't be able to see it. Everyone, I know that you're probably thinking I'm stark raving out of my mind, but wolf spiders, which move along at night quite often, they actually have very brightly shining eyes, so you can spot them at quite a distance. And there's some moth species as well that have bright shining eyes. So I think that's what that was. Probably a spider. The other thing about shining eyes is that unless you're directly behind the light, you won't see them. So if I go, oh, there's a bush baby over there, Brian won't be able to see it because he isn't sitting exactly at the same angle that I am. So you wouldn't have seen the light shining there from the little spider's eyes. Was that riveting, Kirsten? I bet it was. Very riveting, apparently. Hello, Gracie. You wanted to add the story about the piggies coming out of their hole. I'm assuming you mean the warthogs that live on the Bivelshoek cut line. Well, Gracie, what they do, as you well know, but I shall tell you again, they don't like to be in the hole if they're feeling scared or threatened. Now, I mean, that sounds silly, doesn't it? Because normally you would expect if an animal was afraid, it would go into its home and lock the doors. Well, that's what most animals do, and that's certainly what the hyenas do. But because a warthog is not a very good digger, inside their hole, it's often quite easy for the predators like the leopards to pull them out. So, instead of staying in there, what they do is they come out of the hole if they feel threatened. And those piggies that live up on Bivelshoek cut line, I think there were 5 youngsters and 2 sows, 2 females that lived inside one little termite mound. And they lived there, and every time we drove past, they'd stick their heads out and come out. And of course, if you're a very clever predator, like a leopard, or a human being who used to live in this area before you could go to the shops, Gracie, what you would do, there's a little scrub here running on the road, what you would do is go and sit very carefully. You'd wait till the sun went down and you knew that the pigs had gone home. Then you'd go and you'd sneak up the side of the termite mound and wait there over the hole. And then you might make a knocking noise on the top of the termite mound, and one of the pigs would probably stick its head out. And then if you're a Tingana, the leopard, who's very clever at catching warthogs, you'd grab the pig. Or if you're a human being living here many years ago who wanted to feed his family, you might bop one of the pigs over the head with a stick and then take it home to eat. So, Gracie, that's the story of the pigs on Bivelshoek cut line. That was a bit more riveting than my short story, I bet. All right, we're going to bid you a farewell now. Brian, thank you for your stoic efforts this evening.
Well, thank you, James.
Yes, well done. Big thank you to Kirsten Sarcasm McLennan-Smith in the final control, and her Rebecca, who's been ably assisting her. I'm going to hand you back to Jamie, being filmed by Jean-Dre the Foot. and we will see you tomorrow morning at 0600. Yes, that's when we'll see you. Thank you to all of you, for I said to you at the beginning that I thought it might be quite a quiet drive in the wind, but we've had some wonderful chats, and I thank you very much for taking the time to send through your questions and then hopefully listening to the riveting answers that I gave you. Until the dawn tomorrow, bye-bye and stay safe.
Tomorrow, dawn will tell whether or not Tingana and Thandi have fully separated. She seems to have disappeared off into the dark night, and he has shown absolutely no interest in following her. And just bear with me for 1 second. I just need to chat to Mike. Mike, if you give me 2 minutes, then I'll move out of the spot. You can pull in.
I don't mind if we both can see, but if there's visual from behind you, no problem.
Copy that, thanks, Mike. He's very flat. Just letting Mike know that he might have to just wait for just that little moment that he can take my place and get the best view. We've got a beautiful shot of those lovely paws that we were speaking about earlier, that leave those perfect round paw print tracks. You can even see the 3 lobes at the back and the dew claw sticking out a little bit. Tingana has been mating with a lot of the females in this area, and there's a chance that he is the father of both Karula and Shadow's cubs. And Jilly was wondering whether or not a male leopard would recognize his own cubs. And the answer is yes, for the most part. That's sort of the way that nature would intend it. He wouldn't recognize the cubs as his own. He would recognize the cubs as being cubs from a female that he has mated with. And we've spoken a lot about the fact that the females will move from male to male and mate with as many different options as possible in order to ensure the safety of their cubs. It would be exactly the same for any male recognizing. He'd never be able to tell if they were his or another male, but he would know that they are the cubs of a female, so therefore possibly his own cubs. A really interesting question. Tingana has been, according to guides that have worked in this area longer than me, apparently he has a reputation of killing cubs, but that might have just been that he hadn't mated with a female and therefore was an undeserved reputation, because it might just be that he was in the process of acting on natural male leopard instincts. And killing a cub in order to bring the females back into estrus and mate with them and pass on his genetics. Just check carefully on your left there. You have checked, okay. She was lying up on my left somewhere there, but I think she's moved off. Cool. A very sleepy cat, and yes, I think we have reached the point that they have gone their separate ways. And we will just have to wait for dawn tomorrow to find out if either of them make a kill. I think Thandi is going to go straight back to her comfort zone, to her territory, which is further south of where we are. Tingana, however, might still be around, and we'll get to hopefully get a better glimpse at that injury on his leg, because it looks to me, now that I'm seeing his left side, it looks like he's got a bit of a scrape on that left knee as well. There's something uncomfortable, but exciting prospects nevertheless for our sunrise safari tomorrow. And who knows, we might even discover where the Nkuhumas decided to fly off to between yesterday and today. We've got quite the cat streak going on. Hopefully we can keep it up for the drives ahead. Chandra, thank you very much for all of your fantastic camera work as always. And thank you to Kirsty and to Rebecca in Final Control for directing the show and choosing what you see on your screens and making often very difficult and very good decisions. And then most importantly, thank you to you all for your questions and your comments that you send through to us and make every drive a pleasure. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. We'll catch up with you for the Sunrise Safari.